brute force. If it doesn't work, you're just not using enough. You're listening to SOFREP Radio. Special operations military news and straight talk with the guys in the community.
Rad with another awesome episode of SOFREP Radio. You guys already know that I don't like to tell you who my guest is until I tell you, but you've clicked on the link and so you already know he's here. But before I introduce him, let me tell you about the merch store. So go to sofrep.com/merch, pick up some of our branded goods. We love seeing that splattered all over social media. Hashtag SOFREP Mafia. Thanks so much for supporting us and keeping the fireplace going with the merch shop. Second is the sofrep.com/book-club. That's right, book-club. You go check that out. It's curated by the special operators behind the scenes, putting books together that they think you would like to read. All right, so go check that out. Go check out the book club at sofrep.com. Also, the loadoutroom.com has taken off with gear reviews, articles. The podcast is shared over there now, so make sure you're checking out the loadoutroom.com. Now, my next guest, his name is Gene Yu. He's a former Green Beret. He went to West Point, and I'm going to read a little bit about his dossier, and then we'll welcome him to the show, okay? So so we're going to talk about, first of all, one of his books that he wrote called The Second Shot by Gene Yu. But Gene was born in Concord, Massachusetts in 1979 and entered the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1997, where he majored in computer science and graduated top of his class. Gene served in Korea and Japan as a U.S. Army armorer and Special Forces officer. He deployed for 4 combat tours in Iraq and the Southern Philippines and is a recipient of 2 Bronze Stars medals and the Combat Infantryman badge. In 2015, Gene founded Blackpanda Group, a cybersecurity, insurance, and emergency response services company headquartered in Singapore. And currently he serves as the CEO. Gene is also an alumnus of Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies and Stanford Graduate School of Business. Welcome to the show, Gene.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, Rad. Glad
Yes.
to be here.
And thanks for coming to us from Singapore tonight. I know it's about 12:30 a.m. your time, and I'm in Utah. It's beautiful, sunny. It's about 10:30 in the morning here, Mountain Time, and I got the fireplace going. It's about
Nice.
It's going to be about 88 high today. Started out about 54 in the low. So, how's Singapore today?
It's absolutely sweltering and humid as it is every day out here.
Oh.
It's we're almost on the equator, so it's a different scene out here. There's no seasons, right? It's basically just the same year around.
Is that a
So I'm jealous of
UOP
your weather.
hat? What is that?
It is. I thought
Yes.
I thought I'd wear it for this podcast.
Yeah,
It's SF, yeah.
No,
So
that's
what's
awesome.
funny is people actually ask me about it out here in Asia sometimes. And they're like, "That's cool. I've never heard of that university in the States, Pineland, University of Pineland. Where's that?"
Yeah.
And usually I just have a chuckle and say it's somewhere in North Carolina. Yeah, small school in North Carolina.
A select few go through, huh?
Right.
Now, Gene, you guys have asked to be on the show to talk about, your book that you've written, which is going to get into, I believe it's Evelyn Chang, right? Did I remember that correctly, right? And
That's
she
right.
lost her husband in an ambush situation, in the jungle settings of the Philippines. And I know there's so much to this book that I've learned, but I also know there's a lot to you. So, but let's go to prequels like Star Wars. Let's go back. Okay, you're like 16 years old, living where?
Yeah, so at that point, I'm in Cupertino, California, where Apple's headquartered. That's where my family moved. I was born in Massachusetts, as covered in my bio briefly there, but I moved out when I was 10, and spent kind of my adolescence in South Bay, Silicon Valley. That's where I grew up. So, yeah, at that time period, like a lot of teenagers, pretty confused, trying to figure out my identity.
Were you
Pretty
skateboarding,
frustrated.
scouts, baseball?
Skateboarding. I was a little bit weirder. Like I had a kind of like this confused goth, thing going on with the
That's
trench
cool.
coat, and but then it was like this nerdy tennis player. So we had this. We actually were one of the best high school tennis teams in all the West Coast, but in the States, tennis doesn't get a lot of respect, growing up in high school, and so. But that was kind of my identity, right? So I was a bit frustrated with my lot in life, and felt like I was a pretty cookie cutter, like every other Asian kid in Cupertino. I'd caveat that I grew up in an area that's a part of the states, one of the few parts of the states that's dominantly Asian American population, right? So my high school is over 50% Asian, right? And so I kind of grew up in an Asian American bubble, around that area. And I mentioned this in my writing as well. I went to public education, pretty much all the way through West Point. And oddly, my high school, Monte Vista High School, was so anti-military that they didn't even allow recruiters onto the campus. So I had never actually even heard of West Point, but they sent me a letter recruiting me for tennis, and I thought it was like Hogwarts,
Yeah.
but for warriors rather than wizards, This is pre Harry Potter, so it's kind of a backdated reference, but and when I started looking into more of the school, I was inspired by a book that I actually shoplifted at a local bookstore that I used to hang out at, written by another Asian American named Gus Lee, and he went to West Point in the '60s and wrote a semi-fictional account of his own experiences there, and that's what kind of tipped me off to the whole school and the experience, and inspired me to apply, and off it went.
Is that book called China Boy?
Oh, good pull. So that is actually the prequel to the book about West Point. It's called Honor and Duty.
Oh,
so
Honor and Duty.
Boy, yeah. So China Boy, which actually is a book that I read before that as well. So this actually caught my eye when I realized it was a sequel to the same character, which is basically Gus Lee growing up in San Francisco. Right. I mean, China Boy is basically the Karate Kid for an Asian American story, but in the boxing ring, right?
I love boxing, dude. I tell you what, I love it. I just got done today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, training.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I do it every day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, awesome, man.
Yeah.
So that's part of Gus Lee's story in China Boy, and that I don't want to leap too far forward, but so that's actually part of my story as well. So I was the Brigade Open boxing champion at West Point.
Oh.
I got knocked out, and yeah, man.
Yeah. I love you, bro.
But part of my story is I got knocked out in plea boxing and got put in the hospital for 2 days with a severe traumatic brain injury. I still actually, most of my disability check today as a veteran comes from that TBI injury in my medical records, just from my plebe year at West Point. I got messed up, man. I was
pugilist, right? You were pugilist in the military.
Well, I mean, this is a plebe year mandatory physical education boxing, right?
Oh, I see.
And,
mandatory.
Yeah, and I was like in high school, I did go do like a little bit of like Thai kickboxing classes, but I never did anything serious. It was just like went to a gym and they, just had me kick and punch the bag in the corner, and they just took my money, right? But when I showed up to West Point, I had a little bit better form, I would say, than some of the classmates, and so the instructors thought I was a lot better than I was, and put me in with a really good classmate who beat the crap out of me in our first graded bout, and I got hurt, right? And so that was a huge crisis of confidence for me. That hadn't really been in a fight before that. I grew up a pretty PC life, I would say. Growing up in Ashland. Yeah, golf tennis player, right? You know what I mean? Like I wasn't like throwing down like in the streets or anything like that. I grew up a pretty nerf ball.
Not yet.
Life. And, things changed in my adulthood. I lived a very soft childhood, but not so soft as an adult. And and I took that as motivation, right? And ended up training, when on my holidays back home, and actually went back to the same gym, but then found like a very serious, old school boxing coach from like Chicago, this guy named Doc Mongo, and I trained with him, and on my holidays, with like kind of my own little Rocky montage scenarios. Came back to West Point and started competing in the intramurals and gaining confidence, through intramurals and trying to face that fear. And by the time of my senior year, I entered the Brigade Open boxing championship and beat 3 or 4 very formidable opponents and won that thing, man. Yeah, so I love that middleweight champ. Yeah, it's kind of
so West Point's my favorite football college team, and it's now my favorite boxing team. Okay, that's what's cool, up man. Right there. Yeah, let's go West Point.
I don't know about today, but definitely in my era, the West Point boxing team was routinely usually like top 3 or 4 in the country as well for the boxing. So once you win the Brigade Open Boxing Championship for your weight class, you actually earn the starting spot typically, or you can compete at least with the incumbent boxing first string fighters. So I did actually compete a little bit afterwards for West Point itself, and have had a few bouts with some of the top boxers in the country as well, but didn't take it much further than that. But yeah, it was just that whole story for me is a big part of my journey, because it started giving me confidence that I was a little bit tougher than I originally thought, because I got my ass kicked at West Point in the first year. Like I was actually ranked last in the class militarily, like 1,198 out of 1,198. You know, like I failed everything, man. Like I failed land nav, I failed basic rifleman marksmanship. I was the very last one, you know, out on the range. I remember this, like, you know, just basically the worst, you know, and everything was so out of place for me and everything like that. And so, you know, after unimpressing all of my classmates, getting hazed like hell by all the upper class through the first year, it's really the comeback through boxing that started giving me a bit of confidence, you know, that I could do a little bit more. Maybe I wasn't as weak as as everybody thought I was, or even myself at that point, you know. And so that really started giving me a bit of you know, that internal sense of self-worth that maybe I could do a little bit more than I was putting out at that point. So boxing is, we touched upon it randomly here, but yeah, boxing is a huge component of my story. Yeah,
it's huge.
So,
I mean, and I love it. And you're still training, I'm sure, all the time, right?
Yeah, well, boxing these days, no. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for close to 30 years and black belt. I didn't do it back at school, but I did started out a bit in high school, had a big break. But yeah, so I mean, boxing, you know, boxing's great for, I think, for working out, right?
Yeah.
Like you were talking about, I mean, the cardio is unreal, right?
Bro.
I mean, yeah,
You become a runner. Boxers become runners.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking for like the Arnold arms and body, but I'm like seeing my legs in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I'm like, jump rope 3 minutes. Go
Yeah.
ahead, give it a try. Try to jump rope for 3 minutes, and you
Right.
can reward yourself with 3 burpees if you skip the rope wrong, if you catch your toe, right? Just drop and do 3 burpees and then go right back to skipping. See
right.
just 3 minutes. Give yourself 3 minutes of rope time, bro. Just
That's
3
right.
minutes, let alone everything else that we're all putting in at the gym. You know, the coach pulling us over for mitts, and he's like, Rad, you're 6'5", bro. I don't think you're gonna be rolling too much. So why don't we just have you like rocking poles versus like getting all these rolls going? And I was like, someone's bigger than me, coach. Someone's bigger than me, okay? They're out there.
Oh gosh, well, I wouldn't want to get in the ring with you, 6'5". For sure, you hit like a truck.
270.
Damn, I'm sure you hit like a Mack truck, man. I think a lot of people, you know, just on this topic, and you understand this obviously, spending some time in the ring, just even 10, 15 pounds makes a huge difference in terms of how somebody hits you, right? A huge, right? And you know, it's interesting, you know, when you just see people on the street sometimes mouthing off to people that are a lot bigger than them, and it's like, bro, you have no idea. Like when you hit that guy, like he doesn't feel it. You know what I mean? Like,
he could
like
fall on you, even cause you like he's just like.
Yeah, exactly.
My sensei back in the day, I was making a movie, and they put us into this karate class here locally, and with some other actors, and for 3 months we were actually taking, you know, martial arts, and I was really into it. It wasn't even just a movie thing anymore. It's like, oh, I find a hole inside of myself, and he would call me Riddle because my last name is Radel, R-A-D-L, and so he'd be like, Riddle, I don't know what I'd do with you, because he's like 5'3", and he's a black belt sensei. He's like, I was like, what would you do to me, coach? How would you get me, sensei? He's like, well, I'd probably climb you and then just hack you down at the neck.
You can't train size, man. Right? Like that's, you know, it's hard to overcome that with technique. You know, I mean, it's not something that you can learn. You know, so. But I think that boxing and all that teaches you a level of humility, you know, around that in terms of understanding size differential and managing distance, right? The distance management and how dangerous that is inside striking distance of a person that's larger than you. So anyway, what I share is, look, I'm 45. You know, like I need the brain, you know, for work as a CEO and everything like that. So I think that boxing, as I get older, actually, to be honest, I didn't spar hard or compete in boxing after I left West Point. But I mean, there was days like, especially when I was sparring a weight class up, or really even riskier, maybe even 2 weight classes up. And this is only, we're talking like 10-pound differences, right? And I fought middleweights. I was 156 back at West Point. I'm 200 pounds now as an older man, but Yeah, back then I was a lean, mean, 156, and
Yeah.
there was a couple times, man, the 165 or 172 fighters just rung my bell in sparring. And later on that day, I would literally go to class and sit there, and then the next thing I know, like my buddy is like hitting me, like, "Hey, class is over. We need to get up and go." And it's just like it just blanked me out. You know what I mean? Like it rattled my brain in there. It really is not good for you to get hit.
No, it's
in
not.
the
No.
head, right? It's not good for you.
My coach, my old coach, he's like, the ring's right over there, Rad. And I was just like, Coach, you guys can't pay me enough to lose whatever brain cells I have left from high school.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that's it. Like, you want me to get in there? I get it. But you put the money on the table, the right amount of money, we're putting it
Yeah.
out there like, that's it. But at the end of the day, yeah, I have a mouth guard. It sits next to my bed, and
Right.
I've not molded it. And I promised my wife that I wouldn't spar like once I mold that thing, I can put it in my mouth and, so I just have it right here next to my bed. Like there it is if I ever want to mold it for my teeth. But
Yeah.
I'm also 47 now, just recently. So it's like,
Right.
I feel you, it's like,
Yeah.
I love to learn the craft. I love to learn the sport, and I think that it's just healthy for me. I wish I
Right.
found boxing like at 15.
Right.
If I could
right.
tell
right.
someone
right.
out there, bro, I found it
Yeah.
at 40s,
Yeah. Well, they get it all the system as well. I mean, all the testosterone, all that pent up energy. But what I wanted to share is what I like about being a hobbyist with jiu-jitsu today, right, is that you can actually spar each other at 100% strength, right, and not rattle each other's brain in the cage and harm each other in that way. Now, that's not to say jiu-jitsu is it's not soft. I mean, you can very much get hurt, but it's more musculoskeletal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you could.
It's
yeah, I
rolling,
mean,
right? More like you're like trying to hoist Gracie it.
Yeah, yeah. So you get all that aggression out, right, and able to practice the techniques at, again, 100% speed and strength, against a fully resisting opponent to refine the technique, right? Again, distance management, the timing, all that aspect. So I kind of get that out of my system from that aspect of still, I do love combat sports, but yeah, I definitely would not get in the ring and hard spar anybody at this age and place in life. Yeah.
Let me segue your mind now to let's go. Okay, you were armorer. You left
Yeah.
West Point and got commissioned as a lieutenant. And
Yep,
then
yeah.
you were attached to the SF right away, or did you have to go through? I mean, the rigmarole of getting there. Did you get to like the first cap? Who'd you go to first?
Yeah. So when I first started out, I was in Korea. I was with Second Armor, so I was just a straight up a tank officer, right, platoon leader.
Awesome.
And actually started out on M1A1 Abrams, right. I'm not
Nice.
sure they're in commission anymore, right? Old school, like
Chrysler.
we were like the 50 cal on the top. There was this thing called the egg beater, right? Like where you would like rotate it around and like elevate the 50 cal up and down as the tank commander and stuff like that. And it was cool. I remember at the time something that they had said was like, how come we don't have the A2s out here, right, with all the the awesome optics and everything like that? And they're like, well, the North Koreans only have like T-55s, man. We can smoke them with these old things, I thought that was kind of cool that just from a standpoint.
It's just like,
of
this
confidence,
here
right?
is good enough against whatever they have. And you're like,
exactly.
"Oh, dude, this is a rock and like a
Right.
stick. What the hell are you doing here? Dude, you got thermals on the A2, right?
Yeah.
That can see heat.
Yeah.
You're like,
It
oh,
felt-
it's not that fun.
It felt like we were in like some old jalopy, but I kind of like it now when I talk to old tankers and everything like that. I kind of feel like I'm part of that kind of more.
What's a Sabo
80s
round?
era? Yeah, good question. So Sabo round is, I still remember this, depleted uranium tipped 120 millimeter round, right? And what it is it's a penetrator that will actually punch through most other tanks' armor, right? So the other type of round that an Abrams generally fires is a heat explosive round, right? High explosive, and those are more used for like armored personnel carriers, thinner skinned, or Humvees, because blow it up, right? But if you need to take out an enemy tank, like a T-90 was the main one that we always were
Sounds Russian.
fighting, yeah, exactly, fighting theoretical battles against.
Red Dawn, baby.
Right? Yeah, Red Dawn, you know what I mean? Like, and all the simulators were always like, oh no, it's a T-90. Oh,
Yeah,
shit,
here comes the
right? Like,
T-90s.
get that Sabo rounds loaded up, and that's what a Sabo round is, right? So it's depleted uranium tip that just penetrates through that front armor, and I think it's actually recently I think it's the Ukraine conflict that it's actually been really showing that the T-90 is actually not that it was all made up to be. Like the the American Sable rounds and or even NATO Sable rounds are just cutting through it like a knife through butter, right? So
Just going through it
but,
even. Some,
yeah,
like,
just
what
crushing
was
it.
that?
Yeah.
They're like
Yeah.
in there, like, what was that, comrade? He's like, bro, do we now have a
We're
hole
dead.
through our tank?
Yeah. We are dead.
Yeah, we're dead, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, just stop
So-
now, right? Go back to video games, guys. Okay,
Yeah.
just lay down your tanks and go home, Russia. Okay, if you listen to this message.
That's right. So
Yeah.
but back in the day when we were sitting on the, as the brochure attracted me, this
Yeah.
right before we decided our post right before 9/11. So I was class of 2001, which I consider to be the real class of 9/11 for
Sure.
West Point, right? Because we're actually the longest continuous combat class in history of West Point, right? 20
Yeah.
straight years, right? So
And that hit us all differently at our age. You know, you were like 22 years old,
Yeah.
23 years old. Like,
Yeah.
I am now ready to go.
Right.
If anyone is ready to go for such a situation, okay?
Great point, Rad. So that's part of, like, when I joined West Point in '97, it was like Clinton time, right? Like,
Yeah,
people were
Kosovo,
talking
maybe.
about
Yeah.
Kosovo-ish, right? Kind of. It's like this smattering of whatever's going on there, barely anybody's paying attention to it. It's Cold War's over, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are talking about how it's the end of war, right? We won, whatever. The Russians are our friends now.
We
right?
weren't in debt.
Right? Yeah.
We're above.
And Tech 1.0 was going off. Economy is on fire, right? Clinton has downsized half the army, right? People actually were joining. I remember when I was being recruited to go to West Point, and you got to serve 5 years, right? They were actually saying as part of the pitch, yeah, you got to serve 5 years, but since the army's downsizing, you probably only have to serve 2. And actually, if you really push, you might be able to get a waiver and just not serve at all. Like, it was actually part of the story of like, hey, don't worry,
Recruiting.
it may not be, yeah, like, because that
We're
was
in a good
look,
place
as a
right
kid-
now. Yeah.
yeah. Like, 'cause as a
Yeah,
kid, as a kid, like, I just wanted to go to West Point because I thought West Point was cool. I didn't actually want to be in the army. You know what I mean? Like, the
It
army
is
was just
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want you to know it is cool.
Oh,
see
okay,
that,
thanks.
I see that cool, kid looking at West Point because I see that castle. I'm just
Right.
like, wow, that thing's.
Right. And that's where I'm
Wow.
going to prove myself and be a
Yeah.
man. You know what I mean? I'm going to
So
do
cool.
something so hard that nobody can ever talk shit to me ever again. Right? That's
Yep.
what I was thinking about at that time. I was thinking like, oh wow, this place is hardcore. It's different from any other university. Oh, and there's this other thing called the army afterwards that I have to go do.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But especially in the late 90s, I'm thinking it's peacetime. I'm looking at the post. Look, I'm from California, and a lot of the locations don't seem attractive to me, right? Like Fort Polk and these, Benning and these places. But oh, hey, look, Hawaii. Maybe I could go to Hawaii. That would be cool.
Yeah, right.
I'll get a motorcycle. You know what I mean, and cruise around and like
Check
learn
out
how
the
to surf,
beach,
right? Yeah, check out the
mountains,
beach.
volcanoes.
This adventure overseas.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like this
Yep.
is my thought process. And I'm gonna join the computer branch of the army, which would be the signal corps, right? And I'll learn about networks, and I'll come back and work at Apple and be a programmer in a cube farm somewhere, right? That was my mindset before I went to West Point.
Yes.
And when 9/11 happened, to your point, right? At this point, now it's I'm not like some highly trained weapon or something like that coming out of West Point, but I'm a commissioned U.S. Army officer, right?
right.
I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
if it's not me who's going to go fight at this point in time, who is supposed to go fight at that time? You know what I mean? Who are supposed to be the
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
lieutenants?
Right.
Obviously, I am qualified according to the U.S. Army at this point, right?
At
And I
that
passed
time in
everything.
your life, yep, you were
Right.
ready. Yeah.
I was ready, right? So 9/11 actually changed my entire mindset of not using West Point and the U.S. Army for my own personal self-interest, but I really did actually change my mindset at the time to become a volunteer, right? Because I was
Yes.
actually very pissed about 9/11. I grew up in California, but West Point was 1 hour north of New York City.
Yep.
I was down there almost every weekend trying to pretend to be a regular college student. I have a lot of great memories down there, and I was very upset when the planes flew into in those Twin Towers, and of course the Pentagon as well. So that really, to your point, 9/11 and being the class 9/11 changed me entirely about what I was doing with my time as U.S. Army officer. And so, again, to use another Harry Potter reference, but I looked at trying out for Special Forces kind of like the sorting hat, at Hogwarts, right? Like my
Yeah.
mindset was like, okay, I'm ready to fight. And I've joined armor because I thought tanks were cool, but I'm not sure that's what's actually happening in Afghanistan and Iraq right now. Is that really what the main thing is? How about there's this thing called Special Forces. It looks like it might be a right fit for me at this point in time. Like, I've gone to Ranger School, the boxing thing. I'm a little bit tougher than I thought I was.
Yeah.
You know, I'm starting to realize that maybe there's
He's
something
pushing
inside me that,
limits.
yeah, I'm realizing I've got a little bit more. Maybe I could make it into SF, but to me at the time, those guys seemed to just walk on water as well. But I decided to go try out more, not from the sense of being like, hey, I'm good enough to be there, so that's what I want to do, but more, let me go to selection, and hey, Army, you tell me if I'm supposed to be here. You sort me out, because if I can make it through this and you tell me I'm supposed to be here, clearly that's where I'm supposed to serve. Because so few people can make it through this thing. If I make it through, then that is where my duty is and responsibility is to serve, right? That was my mindset after 9/11, why I tried out for SF. So part of it though too was that like this is an era where the internet is not really the internet we know today, of course, and like anything I could find on SF was just like misinformation, to be honest, to a certain degree. Like there's like these weird websites that people had created, like fans of SF, and had all this like weird MySpace looking pages. That was the extent of the information you could find on SF in like 2002, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm in Korea and I'm at a bookstore in Seoul, just hanging out, and then I see a guy with all silver hair and a suit, looking very dapper, and he's got the crossed arrows, which I recognize, the insignia of Special Forces, on a pin on his lapel of his suit. So I roll up to him and I'm like, hey sir, you know, my name's Lieutenant Gene Yu. I'm trying to learn about Special Forces. I noticed you have an insignia. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? And you know, do you know anything about this? And he's kind of impressed, and I, rolled up to him like this in a bookstore. And he's like, yeah, let's sit down and in fact, I'll buy you the cup of coffee.
Nice.
This turns out to be Colonel Rick Thomas, okay, who is the Chief of Staff of Special Operations Command Korea, and later becomes the first Group Special Forces Commander, right? And so Rick Thomas sits down, we chat for, 10, 15 minutes on, this is like a Sunday in a Seoul bookstore. And he goes, you know what, Lieutenant, you're so interested, about SF. We've got this 2-week exercise. Why don't you come down and figure out how you can come down and volunteer and just be like a staff, officer and just help out. And so I, when you do your hardship tours in Korea up on DMZ, you get a trip home every once a year, and they pay for your ticket back home and everything. I took my holiday and went to go volunteer at this exercise, right, to go work for Colonel Thomas. And pretty quickly they realized I could do a little bit more than just get coffee for the senior officers there. And actually they gave me a joint award at the end for writing whatever, good operations orders and things like that. But so after that, he offered me a role. He said, hey, if you're up on your tour up there in your first year, I'll talk to your battalion commander and see if you can come down and essentially be an intern at a unit called Detachment Korea, okay, Special Forces Detachment Korea. And it's a very unique Special Forces team that's been around, I think, since the 50s, and it's all former team sergeants, right? So it's a team of basically all E8s, okay, who have already been team sergeants, right? And each one of them gets assigned. Yeah, they're like the top of the food chain of the the action guys, the team sergeants.
Crank the radio, bro. Go ahead. He passes it off.
Right.
Yeah.
And so each one of these guys are assigned to a Korean Special Forces brigade as an advisor and facilitating the joint operations between Green Berets and Korean Special Forces. And it's all intertwined in the Korean theater in case something kicks off in North Korea, what's going to happen there. So I basically go down there and I intern essentially as I'm the executive officer. They make up a position for because I'm an officer, but basically an intern for all intents and purposes. But that's where I got exposed uniquely as anybody, whether enlisted or officer, but particularly as an officer, to see something like that as an armor officer and being attached. So I was in an airborne unit. I'm wearing like a maroon beret as an armor officer in this unique Special Forces Korea detachment. And got to live in Seoul too for close to a year, which was awesome. And I had so much fun. I'm like 23 years old, 24 years old, just hanging out with a bunch of SF guys. They're like basically running me through the ringer as well. Some of them are hazing me, some of them are taking me under the wing. But I got to do a lot of stuff during that time. I was jumping out of hot air balloons in Korea. I was calling in, we had like A-10s come at one time, and I'm like learning how to call for fire, and we're dropping bombs on like a Korean island.
So they were really
off the
just
coast.
like OJT and you, dude.
Oh yeah, it was awesome, man.
On the job training.
Really, yeah. Oh, I got to go with them to like Okinawa, like with
Yeah.
the dive guys, and I was like, I couldn't go on the actual dive operations, like the combat dive training and stuff, but I could go and see what that was all like, and did all like the they call it
Up
the
here.
surface swimming, yeah,
Up here.
yeah, just seeing how it all went
Wow.
down, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And and in SF, so much of it is like there is a strong aspect of networking and reputation, right? They always say like the day you start selection, your reputation, your name starts in SF. And as a lieutenant, showing up in Okinawa, I was meeting like some of the NCOs and stuff like that that would become teams that were team sergeants by the time I showed up as a team leader. And people were like, "Hey, I remember you. You're that guy that came from Korea and helped out. You're a good teammate at the time, or a good dude, whatever." And that all started playing into, I think some measure of positivity of my reputation. So, but anyway, so it was a really unique experience when you're asking me about like where I got into SF and everything.
Yeah.
Like, as I actually got a preview through that way. And so once I got into that unit and saw everything, oh man, and then I got sold all the way through, right? Because then I actually realized that this whole thing was about unconventional warfare, and could leverage the aspect of me being a minority, having that ethnic, cultural kind of adaptability, or how do you say it? Just like being able to navigate, two cultures. Language, right? Like my Chinese
Showing that
at the
anybody
time was
can
not
do
good,
it
but
from any
yeah.
culture. Like,
Right.
it doesn't have to just be somebody specific. It's like anybody can put their mind to it, and no matter their shape, color, or well, their shape, but still,
Yeah.
I feel
shape
you,
still
dude.
matters a bit. Yeah, shape
Yeah,
matters
yeah, a little bit, especially at that point. But no,
Yeah.
I feel you, and yeah, I mean, one of the baddest SF guys on my dad's team, his last name was Kim, and he was Asian dude, and he was about 5'6", and he was
Yeah.
coming. He was a little dude though, and he was coming down on a halo jump, and we were all at the airport watching everybody do their jumps, and I was a little kid, and I remember he came down, but the wind had picked him up. He was so light and just slammed him right onto the ground. I never saw my dad and his guys run so fast.
Oh man.
Because they'd already come down from like regular style PLF jumps, and then he was just coming down the halo style, and then they're all watching him, and then the wind just picked him up like 40 feet above the ground and slammed him right down. They were hauling.
man.
Yeah, Kim, this is for you, bro. I know you're out there acting in Utah. If you listen to this, what's up?
Okay, well, I hope he recover from that. That is very dangerous. 'Cause it's all about the landing, right? And it sounds like he caught a pocket of air, and yeah, people get really hurt, that way, right?
Oh, he was close to the. He was like, to me, I think he was probably like 30 to 50 feet up off the ground before he was going to land, and then he was probably like coming down, pulling on his strip, and it picked him up and dropped him, hit him hard.
There's nothing just perfectly fine about jumping out of aircraft, and we're not supposed to be up
Except
there
the
as
aircraft.
human beings, right? Yeah, we're not really supposed to be up there as human beings. You know what I mean? Like from a nature standpoint, and but yeah. So but back to the whole Det K story. So with the first time I actually went to selection, I got sent from Korea to selection, right? And I actually failed the first time, and that's a longer story in itself that I talked about in the book. But I failed the STAR exam, right? I wasn't like I just mentioned that I failed the land navigation exam at West Point and like barely passed that, which is like basically a scavenger kid's hunt, by comparison, even for land nav courses. The STAR exam is really hard, right? It's, I think now I saw something in the news that the jungle warfare course is back, I think in Hawaii. That was at the time considered to be the hardest land nav exam, was the jungle warfare course, but in Panama. But they had shut that down by the time I showed up. But people always kind of qualified that the STAR exam was the second hardest to that one, even though it was shut down. So in theory, what they're saying is the STAR exam was the hardest land nav exam in the Army at the time. And and I got my ass kicked, and I didn't pass, right? And actually worse, and it's a longer story in my book, but I actually lost my rifle right on the land nav exam. I had strapped it to the back of my rucksack. I was going through one of those nasty draws on the STAR exam. I mean, these are like the thorns are like as long as like a man's finger, coming out. It's like triple concertina wires. You get through this, and you're fighting through these draws for literally hours, just feeling like you can only move an inch at a time. There's cases during the train up or during the STAR exam where people will actually get stuck in the draws, and they'll need to pull out like the Kaya was with the ISR infrared, kind of vision to see, and they'll just see like these wannabe Green Beret, students, right, just stuck in the draw and just paralyzed. They've just been trying to move through it, that they've just gotten entangled so much they can't even move. And it literally becomes a like a safety situation from a survival standpoint to get to the guy, especially in
And you have your ruck on your back, right? You guys are all rucked up and the full kit and caboodle, and you're trying to like just move through something, and it's just every time you move, it's probably getting you.
I don't know how to describe it. It's like some type of like wicked, type of trap. You know what I mean? Like a maze trap of things that are just entwining. And by the way, like this is oftentimes in the pitch black, right, darkness, right, because there's no lights around and you're just in the middle of the woods, and you can't even see as the thorns are coming in, like coming at your eyes. You know what I mean? And your nose, and your mouth, and you can't even see this as coming in at you. So I bring that up because as I was trying to move through this draw, I decided to take my shovel, right? They call it the E-tool, right? The foldable shovel that you carry. And I had on the tip of one of my decade mentors, Tony Bell, had gone to a miller in Fayetteville, and I had him sharpen the E-tool sides, right? So you're not allowed to bring a machete, okay, to selection, right?
Nice.
And for this exact purpose, because you could just cut through the draws with the machete. Like you definitely in a normal situation would not try to go through a draw without a machete, right? You got to cut through all that. So I had the E-tool sharpened right on the side, so it's kind of like a makeshift machete, right? And so I pull that out, right, and I start hacking through the draw. And I'm making good time, but because I'm using with both hands, that's why I strapped my rifle top of my rucksack, and as tight as I could, right? Horrible move, right? And so at one point, actually, there's a big branch, and I was hacking at it, trying to get through. I missed the branch, and I just buried my shovel straight into my shin. I still have a scar on my knee now, but it basically literally buried it into my own leg, and I just screamed like crazy, right? I'm in the middle of this draw by myself. It's bleeding all over the place. I actually had a good buddy later when we were circling up, and I was telling the story. He's like, dude, I heard you. I thought that was like a wounded animal, like a wounded animal got attacked by like an animal fight happened or something, right? Because we're like way the hell in the middle of nowhere out here, And so I basically crawled through the draw, got to the side, patched myself up a little bit, and then realized my rifle's gone, right? And I'm like, no, right? Because it literally just spent 2 hours trying to get through that thing. And futilely look for it really quick, in the draw. Definitely, it's realize it's gone, right? There's no way I'm going to find that. And as I realized that I've just failed the STAR exam, and it was the last try, the third day.
Oh, geez.
I'm like, all right, I'm done, right? I'm not going to be. No, I didn't make it, right? The sorting hat sorted me. Okay, I'm not going to be Green Beret. Okay, all right, I'm just going to go back to Korea and just be, get mocked by all these senior team sergeants, and that just invested a year with me. I reached down to grab my map to go back to the base, and my cargo pocket, it's split open, and the map is actually gone too. So I don't even have a map on a land navigation exam. Right? I've lost the map.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about frustration, right? Of just failure. It's humiliating as well, right? To see
Murphy's Law.
Murphy, beyond Murphy. Murphy times 3, right?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be a soldier, right? I don't have a rifle. I don't even have a map, right? I don't even know what direction, cardinal direction, the base.
Well, you have an E-tool.
Yeah, I have an E-tool. Yeah, I've got a machete. In case some animal comes by, I'll be able to kind of defend myself with it. So, yeah, so I don't even know what cardinal direction the base camp's at, right? So I just kind of grab my ruck and just wander, just start wandering any random direction. And just by pure luck, I wander after about an hour straight into the STAR exam base camp, right? That's just random as well when you think about it, right? Because the thing is huge, right? We're talking about 30, 40 kilometers of space. And so I wander straight into the base camp, and it's about daybreak because STAR exam starts at 1 or 2 a.m. or something like that. And they all take you to these random places, and then they just give you 1 point, right? And then you set out on that point. It's usually 8 to 10 kilometers away through all sorts of nasty terrain. When you get to that point, it's usually a special forces instructor who's got a camouflage tent, and he's hanging out, hiding in there. And I point that out because a lot of the regular U.S. Army land navigation exams, there's nobody sitting there. It's like a big sign that's like posted on top of a tree, and sometimes it's even like really high up, so you can really see it far away as well. And sometimes it's even fluorescent orange, like some of the courses I've been on. I mean, it's like easy, you know what I mean? Like once you get within like a couple hundred meters of it, you usually can spot it, right? You're like, oh, it's right there, right? Not to mention that there's usually a lot of other people going to the same points the way that they arrange it. So you kind of see like other people around you, and you kind of quietly cheat off each other and just kind of see like, oh, he's going that way, I'm going to go this way. You're like totally alone in the STAR exam, right? So you got to walk right on top of the point, and that the instructor is trying to keep quiet too, right? He can hear you tromping around, cursing, trying to get through all this all the time, and he's just sitting there just laughing at you, reading like a Maxim magazine or something like that, or Playboy. And anyway, so kind of going all over the place about the STAR exam, but
no, I love it.
When I get into the base camp, you know, I realize that it's about daybreak, right? So it's the sun's coming up because we start so early in the morning, and I go knock on the hut to tell them that I failed, right? And I expect them to put me in this this thing called the quitter's corral, where they rope this area off. You sit in front of everyone like the big loser, when you either quit or. Yeah, it's very humiliating, right? This is funny, right? Because it's so not today's Nerf ball. You know, like I don't know. I keep on hearing about these weird things in the Army today, but I just know what like the private sector is like, and all this like DEI stuff. This is like the opposite of trying to like make everybody feel good and included, right? This is like you failed. You sit in front of everyone. We humiliate you. Right, like everything about
like specifically the rope says you sit behind the rope.
Yes, like if you thought you were a loser before, let's make it really clear.
Here's a little ring for you.
Yeah. Let's make it absolutely clear to you that we think you're a loser, right?
Oh man.
And so I'm expecting I'm gonna have to sit in this corral, right?
Oh,
and one of the instructors, actually the nicer instructors, comes out and it's like, hey, what are you doing, man? Like the STAR exam's only half over, and I tell him like, you know, I lost my rifle and my map, and I thought he was just laugh and just be like, you know, send me over to the corral.
What are you doing?
But he actually is like, hey, actually, you know what? Even though I remember this very specifically, he's like, even though you're an officer, I've been watching you, and you're a good teammate. Because I was trying to help out a lot of people during selection and all this stuff. And he's like, you know what? I was actually hoping that you were gonna pass. And he sees that nobody's looking. He goes back, grabs me another rifle, grabs me another map. He's like, go, right?
Dude.
And I was like, oh shit. And so I had another lease on life, right? So I just started hauling ass, right, to get to my first points, right?
Yeah.
And man, I
Holy
mean, this story.
You're like, I'm going, dude.
It's like, oh my God, maybe I'll have another chance, right? I mean, like, you know,
like right here.
I've only got like a few more hours, right?
Yeah.
But maybe if I just run, you know, I'm not going to follow any discipline because I just got to take huge risk. No way
and get it done now. Yep.
Right. And don't forget, I've got like this gash wound on my leg, right? So I'm just like limping and by the way, this is like 2.5 weeks into selection, right? That's day in, day out, right? This is the Army, right? So this is 7 days. Yeah, this is 7 days a week, right? There's no weekends, you know, like at some other soft, you know, schools and stuff like that. Like this is just straight through, 4 hours of sleep or less a night, 2 meals a day. You're hallucinating, you're under malnutrition, you're losing like 10, 20, 30 pounds throughout this whole thing. And I'm just exhausted, right, as you're heading out. And anyway, so I tell them I go for it, you know, try to skip to the end of the story, but basically the last point that I need to get to, I've got just a few minutes, I'm so close so I can't find it. I throw down the ruck, climb this tree, right, which you're not allowed to do, right? And again, I leave my rifles out there.
Unconventional.
Tree. Yeah, unconventional. Like a monkey just climbing this tree. Maybe I'll just see the point, you know, from up here. I mean, actually, I do. I see the instructor taking a piss, right? And I'm like, yes, it's like 150 meters away. I got it. I jump down. I start running towards him, and then the guy, like, literally while he's taking a piss, is like, candidate, sit down. Time's up. Right. It's been up. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I failed selection the first time with my tail between my legs, so close, you know, and with all the crazy shit that just happened, that story, and went back to Korea. That was one of the worst like ways they could return to that team. You know what I mean? Now my closest mentor there, Tony Bell, was just kind of like, you know, it's just like he was disappointed, but he didn't like rip me. There was like some other dudes who were there that And they didn't really like that there was an officer in the unit anyway. But man, they were brutal, man. I mean, they'd already heard, through their connections through the grapevine. They're like, you lost your rifle. They're
Bro.
like, I mean, not even. I mean, SF guys are not exactly the softest people, as you might imagine, right? They're pretty direct with their feedback, and they're just like, not even like, oh yeah, it could have happened, or try again or anything. They're just like, you suck. You know what I mean? Like, like really, like, like, there's nothing else to say. Like, how do you lose your rifle? That's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
It's like, here's the rope.
They're like, yeah,
Sit behind this rope right now.
they're like, yeah, it's like, they're like, thank God you didn't pass. You're an idiot. Like, we could have been on a team together. Like, oh my God, you're such an idiot. And so, so that was actually obviously a huge defeat and humility. And also, it's just such a long flight to think about it as well, right? All the way from North Carolina all the way back to Korea and and everything like that. So when I left Korea, continuing in my career, then I went to the infantry advanced course for captains at Fort Benning. And when I was down there, I was just like, they don't let officers go twice usually. Okay, that's the conventional standard.
I was gonna ask, yeah.
Yeah. You won't hear, like, a lot of people actually, when they hear the story, they're like, what? How's that possible? Officers aren't allowed to go twice. Well, when I started realizing I wanted to try a second time, I started calling the branch office, right? And immediately they're like, no, officers don't get a second chance. Don't call back. And then through like the email system, I found a civilian lady's name that I realized I worked in that office, and I called her instead. Mm-hmm. And she was just like a friendly lady, right? And I just kind of started building a rapport with her, over the phone, just kind of like, hey, like trying to figure out the slot, you know what I mean? And then and then sort of like just kind of like not calling her repeated, like I called her like come here like 2 or 3 times to ask some questions and try to see if I could sneak my way back in. And actually, the officer who had the major who had basically told me that I couldn't come back the first time, that like the second or third time I called this lady, picked up the phone and was like, Lieutenant, I already told you can't come back, and then like hangs up, right? And so then I thought it was done, right? And I'm like, okay, I better not get in actual trouble here, right? Because it's major, whatever. Like, I just thought I was trying to be persistent, and fast forward another like month or two, and then that major emailed me. He's like, you know what, Lieutenant, you're lucky fucking day, right? Like an officer dropped out of selection. There's a slot here. If you want, I've got it for you right here. If you show up, and like this is like right when the advanced course had ended for me, so it was like, if you show up here like in 3 weeks, you can have that. You can have the slot. And I was like, oh damn. And so I had actually been, just from on a personal standpoint, because the STAR exam had kicked my ass, and I realized I was so bad at land navigation. A few of the weekends when I was at Benning, I grabbed one of the Benning, maps, and topographical maps, and I was going out there practicing what I'd learned. So what a lot of people don't tell you is, like, during selection, they actually run some of the best training I'd ever received on land navigation. Actually, the very best training I'd ever received on land navigation, right? I never really got trained very well before. I was taught by cadets, you know what I mean, who don't know anything. And so I learned a lot while I was there, but just didn't have the chance to like let it process and sink in. You know what I mean? Like it's like you get taught and then you immediately have to implement it on a test, right? And so
it's like, what's a saddle? It's like, what's a peak? What's a valley? You could use your fist. You know what I'm saying? And start going.
Yeah, exactly. But like really really letting, like, mastering it and really understanding the principles. You know what I mean? Like, they taught a lot of things that could be considered very advanced techniques for land navigation, that wasn't taught in like the regular Army, and I had a chance to like take my time and practice that, at Benning, and so when I showed up for selection again for the STAR exam, I crushed it, man. I was the first one to finish out of my whole class. I got all 4 points in the first day before the sun even came up, man. Like, and I didn't run or anything. I just planned and just made 0 mistakes and just never stopped moving.
That's
right.
Awesome.
It was just, you know what I mean? It was just like, I'm actually quite proud of it, because it was just like kind of back to our like discussion about combat sports, boxing,
I was gonna say, it's a speed bag for me, bro. It just starts happening.
It was just efficient, right? Like the technique was on point, right? And it was actually practiced. And I wasn't worrying about a million other things because the basics were down to muscle memory at that point. Because I've been practicing so much land nav. And so that really gave me a lot of confidence as well, again, of just being like, oh, I'm not the most natural soldier in the world. I kind of described how I struggled so much at West Point and everything like that. But I started realizing, I was like, if I'm given enough time, right, maybe I won't learn it as fast as everybody else, but if I'm given enough time, I can master this. But I just need a little bit more time than everybody else, right? And you know, and that's
Unconventional
something
warfare equals unconventional soldier, bro. So you guys aren't cut of the
Gosh.
mold. There's a song that says one man wins out of 100. You know, it's
Yeah,
just how it
right.
goes.
I hope so. You know, I hope so. That's where I ended up. But yeah, that's kind of my story of selection and everything too. So yeah.
I love that about you, and you know, it's so close to home with Dad and everything like that. He would tell me about going out on 72-hour stress tests, like what you're kind of talking about, and he would be like, you know, there's nothing. So I do airsoft war games on a large level out here in Utah,
Yeah.
and back in the day, in the early 2000s, when he was still around, he'd be like, you know, I can see this being practical for like a land nav test, because they're always telling you expect contact.
Yeah.
And he's like, and Aaron, the last thing I did was ever get contact except for some guy at a fire pit stoking a fire saying you're good. Like he's like,
right.
where was that? You know, like that get up and go and like take
Right.
cover and return.
Right.
Why am I wearing face paint? You know, the whole 9 yards. And so he would talk about how sometimes the points would be like 1 point here on the mountaintop, and then like point 3 is right next to it.
Right.
But he still has to go back down to point 2 to
Right.
get back up to point 3.
To get back
you know?
point
It's like,
3. Yeah.
bro. So
I mean, that was always like probably the hardest thing. If you were ever the patrol leader, whether it be at Ranger School or later in the Q course, you know, is like you're moving out on your patrol, and then they hit you with the RD sims or something like that, and everybody's like running like crazy, and then to have to figure out after you've just run and like your team's all over the place trying to bring it all back together, and then to figure out where you are at that point, that was, I think, one of the biggest challenges to land have, and that's the aspect of being able to, as you were saying, like read the contours, really
Right.
be like, okay,
that's real.
like where did we think we were? Like you have to be accurate at where you thought you were, number one, right? And then you have to guess how far did we run and what direction.
Where are we?
Then, yeah, man,
We just had a view, but now we're down here. So wait, on my hand. So what Gene and I keep looking at for the listeners is our fist and your knuckles and the lines of your fist. If you make a fist, it starts to create a valley, and it starts to create spines and, you know, ridges and saddles. So you can use that as a quick reference of like, what am I looking at in the terrain? It's a saddle between two hills, you know, etc.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at for those of you listening through any of those mediums out there. And then, you know, I don't want to like stop talking about your book. I know you wrote this book because after you got out of the military, you kind of went through a little bit of a downtime. You're like, you know, where's all this, you know, how am I going to finagle myself? And you went and got lost in the Philippines looking for Evelyn Chang.
Yeah, that's right. Kind of lost again, right?
Or Chung. How do I say it? Tell me her last
Evelyn
name.
Chang. Yeah,
Chang.
Evelyn
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I think so. You know, like my story, I think is unique in the sense that I thought worth telling, because I don't think there's a lot of SF guys who targeted whatever group they were targeting when they were on the teams and everything like that, to have those people kidnap or just be involved in your life in your post life, post-mill life, right? So basically, there was a major operation called Ultimatum that I was a battle captain on down in the southern Philippines, where we were supposed to take out about 40 of the Abu Sayyaf leadership, which is like the Al-Qaeda arm of the Southeast Asia, or ISIS arm of Southeast Asia. But really these days, or even at that time, they started becoming really just bandits, really just kidnap and ransom groups. But they would use the money oftentimes for terrorist activities or just sustaining their livelihoods. And so 3 of the guys out of the top 40 that we had failed to take out in the first phase of this major operation called Operation Ultimatum, that was battle captain and one of the major planning officers for, 3 of those guys, 5 years later, after I'd already gotten out of the military, this is in late 2013, kidnapped a family friend and then killed her husband while they were vacationing in eastern Malaysia, so Malaysian Borneo. Okay, so that area, like places where a lot of the U.S. military saw conflict in the Middle East, is split up, not really by any sense of they should have been separate countries, but just split due to European colonialism, right? So, in particular, Malaysia used to be Britain's, and Philippines used to be Spain's, right? And so where they split the southern Philippines and eastern Malaysian Borneo, they split a group of people there called, it used to be called the Sultanate of Sulu. And the ethnicity there are called Tausig people, and they speak their own language. Those are the people, and very dominant Muslim ethnicity. Those are the people that largely Abu Sayyaf draws from, and their nation moves across from the Sulu archipelago, or those islands, over into eastern Borneo as well. Okay, so for them, it's like all their peoples are just across this, so-called international border, right? So where Evelyn was kidnapped was at a resort close to Sipidon Island, which is a very famous diving site. I've actually had a chance to go there pre this event. It's definitely the most gorgeous diving that I've ever seen. But there's a lot of a sense of heightened risk there. You can kind of feel it, right? There's a lot of guys, the AKs around. There's a lot of people staring at you all the time, looking at the foreigners, stuff like that. So Evelyn was vacationing on her retirement holiday with her husband. Was vacationing on one of these bamboo stilt rooms, right? So it's kind of like a little villa, right?
Nice little hut out on the water.
A little hut, hut in the water, right? And basically, an Abu Sayyaf longboat came in the middle of the night, came straight up into the room.
Villa.
Yeah, villa, right?
Holy cow, dude.
Shot the husband 8 times, right? Grabbed her, broke the wrist, dragging her on the way out. And it's only 20 or 30 minutes by that speedboat right back into the Sulu archipelago across the international border, right? And she got sold from subgroup, Abu Sayyaf subgroup to subgroup, until she landed at an 80-person Abu Sayyaf camp in Holo. And it actually ended up being an area called Maimbung, where my first ODA was actually operating out of during Operation Ultimatum, right? So this is like straight in my bailiwick, you know what I mean, in terms of two of my tours, area of operation for first group, right?
Yeah.
It's my theater, right? Like I was a team leader of 2 teams when I was in SF. I was ODA 121's team leader, which is a ruck team for my first team, and then I went over to the SIF, or the Commanders and Extremist Force for the second team, and I did 2 trips to Iraq with those teams as well. But what first group is first group eventually got into the fight in Iraq and Afghanistan, but in that 2000s time period, it was all about the Philippines, and so that's one of my AOs, or areas of operations as well, right? So that was just crazy for me, because I was, at this point in time in my career, like, had a stint in grad school. I'd gone to a bank. I was an investment banker for a year or so. It didn't work out, for me. It didn't fit. Then I joined Palantir. That didn't work out for me, in that company as well. I was really struggling, like a lot of veterans, I think, do. Struggling in a different way, right? These are not horrible companies. I was at a very prestigious, well-paying job, but it was hard for me. I was not having an easy time landing on my feet. What I was doing.
It's like caging a tiger. Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta be free, dude. You gotta be able to do you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Just trying to find what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And so I was in between jobs at the time, and really down on myself. Felt a lot of guilt as well. Like, I knew I was in my prime, and felt, man, I'm in a prime. I left Green Beret when I was in my prime, they're still out there, right? You know what I mean? Like, all that, like, waves of guilt, you know what I mean, like, coming through. And so when Evelyn got kidnapped, and my mom called me, she was coming to visit family in Taiwan at the time, told me to come out and meet her. And so when I got into Taiwan, this story was just like nonstop in the news, because people don't get kidnapped in Taiwan, right? Like, Asia in general is a very safe place, right? Taiwan is one of the safest places in the world, minus the fact that China has, like, 1,000
wants
missiles
it
pointed at it.
Yeah, right.
Right.
How we
Minus
just call
this
China
massive-
Taiwan? How about that? How about that?
Minus this,
West Taiwan over there.
West Taiwan.
How about that? Ni hao ma.
That's hilarious. West Taiwan. Yes.
Yeah, bro. Huh? Ni hao ma that.
Yes. So minus this whole World War III scenario, right?
Yeah.
Taiwan domestically is super safe, man, right? And people on the island, it blew their minds that something like this would happen to one of their citizens, right?
Right.
So that's why I was on the news all the time, right? I
On
think like
vacation.
kidnapping. Yeah, on a vacation, right?
in a beautiful
And
villa on a
in a beautiful
water,
villa.
like with a dive
Yeah.
team, and all of a sudden, boom, pirates or whoever show
Yeah.
up, bad
It's
guys.
it's just crazy, right? It's a spectacular story, right? And then also, so her older sister, okay, was classmates with the first lady of Taiwan, okay,
Okay.
who, and then part of my story is that the first lady is married, of course, to the president of Taiwan, who is at that time was my uncle, right? So that's my mother's older brother, right? So yeah,
So
this
you're
is all part of
royalty.
this crazy. I don't want royalty.
I'm
Let's
just saying, I'm
not
not
go there.
worthy.
Man.
Oh,
Let's not go there, man.
tell me how.
I
Tell
mean,
me how. Awesome, bro. That's so
it's crazy,
awesome.
right? It's crazy. So,
Holy cow.
her, even though she wasn't that connected to him,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Taiwan media is very much like paparazzi, right? And so they created this link because also they just couldn't imagine, like, how could it be a random kidnapping like that? It was totally random, right? But how could it be random? And so the media blew it up in a much bigger story as well. And the irony of course, is that she didn't actually ever have much of a connection to the president of Taiwan, but the story did when I got involved, ironically, right? Like naively when I got involved, then it became a very direct connection to the actual presidency. And that's my own naivete as well, because, you know, most of my life, like, I
don't see
know
it.
my uncle
You don't
quite
see it.
well
Yeah, yeah,
now,
yeah.
you know, because I've spent a lot of time in Asia, or in Asia and Taiwan visiting in my post-mill life. But when I was growing up, I only met him maybe once or twice, you know, as a child. And I didn't speak very much Chinese when I was growing up, right? And he mostly speaks Chinese because most of my family all moved over to the States, and all my cousins, I mean, we're all born in the U.S. and grew up in the U.S. And then just him basically stayed in Taiwan. And so his English is really, really good. But when he came to visit the States just those couple times, it was all in Chinese, and you know, there's that distance between, you know, the generations, et cetera. So I really didn't know him.
Yeah.
Like I really didn't know him, you know. And yeah, but anyway, so this connection is very loose for Evelyn to him, but the media had made it such a big story. It was all over the news. And so when I got to Taiwan, my mom is one of her closest friends is the older sister of Evelyn Chang, right? Her name's Angela. And so they were in Taiwan. She lives in Florida, and she had come back to try to help, like, just whatever from the family side of just helping arrange, like, what for this crisis. And so I went to go, they had asked if, like, does Gene know anything about what's going on down in this part of the world? And I was like, at that point we didn't know it was Apasat, but we had a pretty good guess based off of what had happened, right? It's probably those guys, right?
If I have to guess, you're like,
Yeah,
let me
I think it's
think.
probably those guys, you know, so.
Who's got
so we
fuel?
met. So we met for breakfast and came quickly to realize, because Taiwan's not a recognized country, right? It's, even though it is completely operating as a freely independent country with
Right.
its own government, it's
And
fully
democracy.
democratic,
Yes.
its own military, its own currency, you know, everything. China has gotten the whole world, you know, in the United States to agree that's not, right? So it doesn't have any real diplomatic relations with, except for, like, I think it's like Haiti or something, like some really random small countries like around the world, maybe like single digits. And so there's no relationship between Taiwan and Philippines formally, right, in that sense. And so there's no leverage, you know, from the Taiwanese government to be like, yo, help our citizen that's
Yeah.
been kidnapped, right? And came to quickly realize they had nobody was helping them, right? It was literally like just this like loose Interpol connection, and me knowing and understanding at that point is some, you know, knowledge, right, of the Philippine military and Philippine police. I'm like, wow, this is a really bad situation. Like nothing's going to happen here, right? Nobody's
Right.
getting Evelyn out, right? And Taiwanese
So hope
government's
is
not gonna do
lost.
anything.
It's like, what? She's in the jungle somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. So I realized in that moment, I was like, wow, it's not that I'm a good option here, but you have no options. And suddenly, out of all these shitty options, I guess I'm the least shitty,
Yeah.
right? And again, I'm completely available for like the first time in my entire life.
You've
right?
been sorted.
Yeah, I've been sorted. Yeah, great one, Rad. Yeah, exactly.
Let me throw
exactly.
that to you. We
Like
have
the
been
universe
You've been
sorted.
sorted.
Yeah, a lot of ways, Rad. Like even today, this event has happened now 10 years later. A lot of things I think about now, and I talk about this in my writing, is like, it's almost like my entire life. In many ways, you could quantify all of the events in our lives happened to, and then came to the point of this event in your life, but really because there's such magnitude of this, when you look at my whole life of how happenstance it was that I ended up somehow at West Point, somehow, into SF and these experiences and all that type of stuff. After this event occurred, and even today, sometimes I think that the entire point of my life, right, was just to rescue Evelyn Chang. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just to get her out. You know what I mean? Like in a weird, funny way of the cosmic fates of the universe of everything that had happened led to this
built you to
event.
be that rescue element for her, because there would be nobody. You were the one, you know, like nobody else is around. Is anybody else fighting to go down the trail here?
Yeah,
Anybody?
and with the context and the experience, and
It's like it's you.
Yeah, and again, the fact that I was unemployed at the time. You know what I mean? Like if I was still at the bank, at Credit Suisse or at Pound, like I probably would have been like, hey, that really sucks. Like, what a horrible situation. And maybe made a phone call or two, maybe, right?
Right.
And it would have stopped. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it was like, because I was completely available, both.
And your mom called.
Yeah, my mom called as well. Right?
She knows. She's like, I'm gonna get Gene. Don't you worry about it. Everything will be fine. He's
that one
entrepreneur phase.
Well, that one. So Asian mom. After we met, she said, you better not think about doing anything to help them. Right? Like, even though it was her friend, right? You don't put her son into risk, for this, right?
Yeah.
And it was very touchy. So actually, the whole time that I was in the Philippines working on this, I was actually lying to my mom, telling her I was somewhere else, right? I was in Hong Kong hanging out with my buddies, right?
Right.
And you know what I mean? It wasn't until after everything that I confided to her. And actually, even in my time in SF, when I was in Iraq and stuff like that, I just tell her I was in Okinawa, right?
Everything's fine.
Yeah, everything's fine, right? Like this sort of thing.
You're good at
so. Yeah, I didn't want her to worry, So,
Yeah. But she knew you were a Green Beret, right? She understood what that was, right?
No, I don't. Even today,
You don't
I'm
think
not sure
so?
she fully understands, right? I'm just some like little.
You're her boy.
I'm just a little boy. Yeah, I'm just a
Sounds
little
like a
Asian
mama's boy.
right? Yeah. Even now, right?
She's like, Gene, you're going. Is your mom still with us?
Yeah, she is.
Good for you.
Yeah.
You
Thanks,
should
man.
love her then.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
yes,
I do.
send some
I
love
do.
from me on behalf of my parents. Yes.
No, I appreciate that. I caught that, and yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that, right? I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll try to fast forward through the story a bit, because obviously I leave something to the reader for the book.
No, I know. You're great. You're great.
It's
No,
a
they
bit
should
of
go
a
get this
wild
book
one
and
as
look at. If you're listening to us talk, it's called the Second Shot. Okay,
Yeah.
the book
Yeah.
is The Second Shot. Okay, by Gene Yu. If you've gone this long, The Second Shot. This whole interview is
still
about
with
the
us.
second shot.
You're still with us for some reason after all
Yes,
this.
if you're
but
still
yeah.
here, you're having a good time with us. The Second Shot in
Yeah.
theaters soon. No, I mean, really,
the long story short,
Yeah.
actually, I'll share a bit of information on that in a second. But
Yeah,
so the
please.
long story short of it is basically that I was able to get connected up through West Point and SF contacts to the Filipino Scout Rangers, and they actually ended up having assets in the camp that Evelyn was held at. And to cut to the chase, there was a lengthy, very, very high intense, and at this point, I have no experience in kidnap and ransom negotiations, and I was just doing my best, it's like the ultimate battle of wits, right? It's the ultimate heads-up poker game, one-on-one, right? There's no other hands. It's going to be one hand. We're betting it all, both sides.
and time's of the essence.
Time is of the essence, right? There's both sides have pressure, right? Because
Yes.
on their side, they're like, man, I'm running risk every single day that I'm holding on to this hostage, right? I got to feed her. The military's looking for me. The police are looking for me, right? I got to offload this and get my money and get out of Dodge, right? Then, of course, on your side, you're worried about the hostage. It's an ultimate. Like, I just consider that how I describe it, it's an ultimate battle of wits. You know what I mean? Of a trade. And it's one time, right? And you're never going to do business again. It's just who can screw each other over and win on one side, right? So anyway, long story short, I go through the whole story of the negotiation and the various ups and downs of that. During the exchange, we were operating out of a basically Filipino CIA safe house, and an Australian intelligence operative who was working up there as well. We were able to build some. I was able to convince them to give us one of their tracker and logger devices, So we inserted that into the actual exchange of ransom cash and electronics equipment they wanted, and basically vectored in the Scout Rangers to hit them right after the exchange, and it basically over the next few months basically destroyed that whole group. And I've actually only been briefed by it's called NICA, the National Intelligence Coordination Agency, the Filipino CIA. Like about a year ago, I went to go visit them, and they unloaded the entire story because now it's 10 years, et cetera. It's going to be fully declassified, they said, in 2032, but they were able to share a lot of the details. I didn't even know right until very recently about all the operation that spawned off of this tracker and logger that ended up being, I believe, one of the most successful operations against Abu Sayyaf, right? And just lucky, to be honest, right? In that sense,
I get it.
But yeah, like it wasn't really me, it was them, but
The domino effect, though.
the domino effect is just really interesting. Just again, the serendipity of it all, right?
Yep.
And the three guys that we missed at Operation Ultimatum that kidnapped Evelyn, every single one of them got taken out, right?
Oh.
Like in individual operations or the actual full-on company Scout Ranger assault, that they hit the camp with over and over with that, being able to track them with that tracker and logger that we put on them. So that's basically the story, right? And just that ended up being the lead-in to how I created my company Blackpanda today, right? We're $30 million in venture capital now, right? Like this story basically gave me this notoriety here in Asia as like the guy that put this together, and basically investors and people with money were very interested. They're like, hey, you seem like a competent individual. What are you doing now? Hey, and then my co-founder and chairman of my company is actually a former Green Beret who was the big boss at Credit Suisse, Matt Pecco, and he's the first guy. Basically, 2015, it's like, hey, Gene, I want to start a company with you called Blackpanda. I want to put $1 million. You want to come over and run it? I was like, hell yeah, right?
Yeah.
And then partnered with him, and 10 years later, I'm still running this company. We've got offices all over Asia, and we're one of the leading cybersecurity companies out here. So all of this, to your point earlier, is I can share this. They told me that I can share this. Is that we're in discussions with Temple Hill Entertainment, the producers behind Maze Runner and First Man. Some pretty major guys, Marty Bowen and John Fisher.
So cool.
And then do you know the actor Simu Liu from Shang-Chi, the Marvel character? Like there's a Asian Marvel character.
I do.
So he's in discussions as well to be the lead actor for a film story. So
is there a
that's
guy
all
lost
part of
with a
it,
big beard anywhere in your book?
Yeah, actually, you know what's funny? There is a character actually in the story that you could actually play.
I'm just saying, we'll cut the beard. No, you're
6'5",
great.
270. Oh shit, man. Yeah, there's
I
actually a
think you're
character
great,
called the Viking, but yeah.
Let's go, bro. Dude,
Yeah,
you're awesome, bro.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so it's kind of obviously it's obviously fun to be going through all of this, but I think it's an interesting story to share as well, and just kind of tie. But that's really why the book kind of came around, was because in order to have a shot at maybe making a film, we had to write a book, because honestly, I'll be straight up, I didn't have some burning desire to come around and tell the story so much. I mean, I do have agendas in terms of want to tell the story for different reasons. One of the reasons I want to show the heroism as well, the Filipino NICA operatives, who were actually the ones who went in. There's a whole crazy story about how they went in and got it done and everything like that. And did it for me as a stranger as well, right? I had met him basically just a few days prior, and they just completely put their careers
like right
and
away,
their
like
lives online.
Immediately felt the brotherhood, and you were just like, this is the case. And they're like, we got you.
100%. 100%.
Bro, it's so cool. He jumped out of hot air balloons too, man. That's dope. My dad did as well. No, he's got the jump wings with the elephant on them from Thailand.
That's right.
That's way cool, dude.
I jumped out of the ones in Thailand too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, not to go back a ways. Oh, you jumped out of Thailand too?
Yeah.
So his theater was the Southeast. It was all of the Pacific. That was my dad's.
Right.
He was 19th group. So
Got it.
out of Utah. That's what's up.
Nice. Oh, that's right. That's right. It's headquartered out of Draper, right?
That's right.
So yeah.
You say it like you know it.
I would say I know it. I've read it on a piece of paper.
He's like
many
Draper,
times.
right over the. It's like right there, dude. I live 10 minutes from it. Go figure.
I've been through Utah a few times, but I'm not going to say I know Draper.
I'm not going to say I know Draper. It's okay. It's where it's at. That is Camp Williams, baby. All day. 19th, SF, all day. No beret zone and no salute zone.
No salute, good. Yeah, no salute zone, man. Hands in pockets all day, right? So,
pretty much, yeah. Well, Gene, you've lived a cool life so far, bro. You've chased yourself. You're constantly reinventing yourself, and I think that what you didn't mean to do by doing this, writing the book, and now possibly having talks about the movies and having your successful Blackpanda company, it wasn't something that you really saw then as the young Gene. It just was a culmination of everything that you've gone through, and here you are today. I mean,
yeah, thanks, man. I really love this this speech that Steve Jobs gave in 2005, a commencement speech at Stanford. And he talks about how you can't connect the dots forward, right? You can't look and plan it forward of what you're going to do and then put it all together. You can only connect the dots backwards when you look backwards, right? And that's a part of all of this as well. As when I look at the various different things that I've done and just kind of wandered into accidentally, like how do you all stitch that together and make it work for you today, right? It's not about making the right decision back then. It's impossible really at the end of the day to always make the right decision. It's just make it right afterwards, right, to make it work for you.
Right.
And that's why this book's called The Second Shot, right? When I was a student at U.S. Army Sniper School, I remember the instructors emphasizing, right, there's like, it's not, the unofficial motto is one shot, one kill, but it's not about hitting it on the first shot, because over a long distance, there's no way, like the wind is going 2 different directions, 3 different directions, over a long distance. The curvature of the earth, even the temperature is going to change how that bullet flies. So if you hit it on the first shot at a long distance, it's really lucky. Just frankly, just luck that you got it on the first shot. It's about how fast you can adjust the windage to elevation with your spotter on the second shot that shows how good that sniper team really is, right? And I love that because I think of that as a kind of a metaphor, for how my life was in terms of failing everything the first time and then just keeping calm, lock and loading that next round and then just getting a target the second shot, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I try to look at all of this and why I called the book The Second Shot. Because I'm not out there trying to pound my chest. As, I consider myself have been a very average Green Beret, all things told and said. But there's even this story here of missing the first time and reloading the second time and coming after it that's the story I wanted to share with folk. I also, again, the proceeds from this book, even, it's basically all the revenue proceeds I've been pushing towards interest for those Nika operatives.
That's cool.
They wanted like a gun, like they wanted like equipment for their unit. I took them to Taiwan, right, to on a trip out there, right, with what little money I was able to get off this book, all this type of stuff.
How
like
cool.
I'm trying to do it for those reasons and kind of bring attention to the heroism that they provided. I mean, I'm still humbled by that aspect, right?
And that's the Nika Rangers. Is that how we're calling them?
Yeah, so there's 2 units. So it's very similar to U.S. defense apparatus, right? So the Nika would be the CIA, so National Intelligence Coordination Agency, and then the Scout Rangers would be like the Ranger Regiment, right?
Yeah.
And so they've got like basically the same units in parallel of comparison. And organization.
Platoons, battalions, they're like dealt out just like kind of we are.
Yeah, well, they've got their tier 1s and their tier 2s, and it's modeled exactly after the U.S. military because the long history between the two and so intertwined as well, and so critical strategically with Philippines right south of Taiwan and everything like that too, right? So.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it's it's very sensitive area and beautiful people, beautiful country. There's bad actors, and they need to be sniffed out, and it would be, and if we can help them as well from the U.S.'s side, and just continue to pump in revenue to that country and not take their resources, and leave them with a Coca-Cola sign, okay? Can we just like take care of them, please, because they're beautiful people. All right, I love a Dubo.
It's a great place.
Chicken and Dubo is my favorite, bro. So, nonetheless, I'm saying. Thanks, Dad.
Oh, he brought that into your life.
Well, yeah, and we grew up in a Mormon church in California, and so in Stockton, and there was some Filipino families and some Samoans and different families that went to church. So I just grew up eating different food,
nice.
from my mom and dad's friends. We'd go to their houses, and it's like, here's some adobo, and I'm like, this is my favorite. And then my mom would just make it all the time, and then we go over to our friends who are Samoan, and they just feed us like rice pudding and like just all sorts of good food. And so, yeah, bro, I grew up in a diverse life. My parents, even though we were raised in the church, kind of had outside of Utah, it was different. I'm not trying to get into this conversation, but I'm grateful for the food that I was able to eat. Yes, I love adobo.
That's cool, man. That's cool, man. No, That was fantastic.
I remember the internet is forever, so I got to watch it.
Yeah. The other things you want to say, yeah.
That's
It's a
right,
good
my
point.
own advice.
Right.
Now, I'm going to wind us down, Gene. I've had you for over an hour. I know you're in Singapore, and you're like, I got you for so time, and I've taken much of your time, but you've been awesome, dude. And you're always welcome back on the show. If you ever want to get back on and talk deeper about Blackpanda, you know, and put that out there as just something we can help spread.
I mean, one of the things about Blackpanda too is, the co-founders are all SF guys, right? So we were all Okinawa SIF guys, actually. Now, Matt was ahead of us by 17 years, but the other co-founder, Kevin McCaffrey, he was actually on my team when we went to Baghdad together, and then we actually co-founded the company together. So it's actually an SF founded company. You know, we just stayed out in Asia. We like to privately call ourselves like forward deployed still.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, I feel you.
Right, we're like on the front lines out here in cyber, out here in Asia.
Well, I have you right now. So who's your client? Who would you want to reach out to Blackpanda? Who is that person that would be interested? Let's just put that out there.
Sure. I mean, and our kind of specialization, I would say, in the sector that looks for cybersecurity the most are like finance and banking, like banks, you know what I mean? Or just basically the folk of the finance sector, because they're regulated. They're the guys who've got the money, right?
Yes,
So hackers are coming in and want to steal their money, right? So those are the guys that we predominantly protect. And we specialize in cybersecurity in essentially crisis response, right? Which is the whole theme of my career now. I realized, not again on purpose, right? But both in public service, personal situations, and now private sector, it's all the same to me, you know, in terms of responding when something bad goes. And that's basically what our company does, right? We're the leading company for it across the region out here. Yeah.
So if any of my listeners out there are in the finance industry and they're looking for somebody to help safeguard their cybersecurity, you should reach out to Blackpanda, the
That's
Blackpanda
right,
Group. And
Yeah,
Matt,
we need
who's
some
17 years
foundation.
older than everybody else.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's the youngest. He's the youngest dude out of the three of us, though, man. Like in terms of spirit and attitude, and he's actually the most. He's the most fit too. He's like ripped right now. But yeah,
Figured I might as well just. We've never met, Matt, but I'm sure we will. And you're more than welcome to come out here too, and we could talk about age is just a number, bro.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Do you
Well,
ever
look,
have people come out to Utah to do it in person or anything? Or
Yeah, so pre-COVID, you know, I was always doing a lot more in person. I had a studio I was using through Black Rifle Coffee Company back in the day. They're here in Utah, so they're like, rad, bring your guests in here. And it was way more personal. And then COVID, and then now this medium is here, and we've built up. I have built something off of this with SOFREP, and there's, you know, folks that reply to me and then former generals that write me reviews like, Rad, that was a good episode. I liked how you treated the guy with his question. I'm like, if these guys are sending me these emails from LinkedIn and stuff, I'm like, all right, you're good to go. I'm going to keep doing it. But if you ever came to Utah, we could set up a thing where it's one-on-one on a snowboard lift, and we would just strap in and go snowboarding. I don't know if you do.
Awesome, man. I do.
But
I do. I do snowboard. I'm sure I'm not as good as you living in Utah, but yeah, I can board. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think Matt and Kevin would love to come on. You know what I mean? Because we've got some crazy stories as well, as you might imagine, from when we founded Blackpanda. And,
of course.
You know, a bunch of SF guys just.
And just like what you and I just did, you know, how we just kind of like went through the do-si-do of how nice to meet you, good to know you. You want to play Contra, you know?
Yeah. What is it? Up, down, AB,
Left,
AB.
right. Up. You know, I turned that into a punching move. So my coach would be like, all right, everybody, next minute, free bag. I'm like, up, down, left, right, BA, select, start.
Hey, that's probably a great combination, man.
Bro,
Because nobody
I'll
knows
tell
what
you
you're
what,
doing, right?
dude, I'm like, up, down, you know, head, body, you know, left, right. And then I use my 6 and 7s are like, you know, my over the tops is my BA, select, start. I do.
That's cool, man.
It is. And you're cool. And you're cool. And you know what?
Thanks.
I'm gonna close our show off on a cool note like that. And if anybody wants to know about Blackpanda Group, go check it out. If you want to know about The Second Shot, written by Gene Yu, excuse me. I was gonna say former Green Beret, Special Forces, West Point graduate, second armorer, officer, tank commander, Sabo round sender downrange, UOP hat. Thank you so much on behalf of myself and Brandon Webb, who runs the website. Anton, thank you for everything you do. Chris and everybody that's making these cool reels out there that I get to share on social media. I appreciate you guys chopping it all up and making us look awesome. That'll happen to you too on this episode, so look for that. And thank you on behalf of my guest, Gene. And this is Rad saying peace.
You've been listening to SOFREP Radio.